Okay, continuing on with the video. Okay, so basically we're going to load the screws up to our rattle gun. We've got our marker on the wall already, and when we use the rattle gun, obviously you hold it nice in centre, make sure it's going the right way, because it's clockwise, and just feather it in. That's enough. Now the forward and reverse is on your handle there, like so. You push that little button through, it goes one way, going anti-clockwise, push it through the other way, and it goes clockwise. Okay, so we get our 4 screws in, do the top right, do the bottom left. Once you've got one holding it, don't do the other 3 up tight until all 4 are in position. It's quite easy to pull the block out of shape. Right, okay, now we've got our first block in. Now we said 400 centimetres. Now a good way to actually do 400 centimetres is not to measure from centre to centre, is to get the first block in where you want it, and then measure from the outside of the first block, which is the right hand side, to the inside of the second block, which will be 400 millimetres, and I'll throw a label, a mark on the wall there like so. And I know then that that's the inside of the next block like so, which is the right hand side again, that's the same as putting it 400 millimetres to the centre. You can check that for yourself once you do it, but I can confirm that in a second. So I'll get this second block on. You keep your tools and your resources really close to there, like your screwdriver and your screws and so on. Well, then they're nice and easy to be able to get to. You don't have to make a big mess while you're doing it. Okay, there are my 4 screws. When you put your drill bit on the table, just lay it down horizontally so it won't fall over and onto the ground or damage the tool at all. Okay, so that's basically Topic Skills Prac 5.3 1.4.1. It's just asked us to mount the blocks and to get the PowerPoints. We go over the page and we look at the work activity. Now when you're doing that, you can actually work out once you've done that, because you can't always work out what the hazards are at your level of competency at the moment until you understand what's involved. And that's why in this particular case here, in this particular unit of competence, which is 0009, is that we're actually doing the task, and while you're doing the task, you're going to ascertain some of the risks, some of the dangers that can possibly be identified while completing the task. And as you can see there, I've actually knelt down. If I'm going to do that for a long period of time, good practice would be that I have knee pads on. I've got my PPE on, I've got my safety glasses, I've got my high-vis jacket on, and I like wearing a hard hat. A hard hat isn't mandatory in a situation like this because we're not working at heights and there's nothing above us that's going to cause damage to us from overhead. However, that's something that I personally like doing, but you don't have to do that. So carry out your risk assessment, which is 1.5.1, once you've got those first 2 blocks on, and we're going to carry on with the skills practice. So we go down to the bottom of page 4 of 7, and that's to carry out the routine work activity. So now it's asking us to attach 2.5mm 2-core on earth thermoplastic sheath cable to the timber using the correct cable clips. Run this cable between the 2 blocks, between that block and that block, and connect 2 power points with the wires coming out of the block, and leave a 400mm spare tail on one end so we can test our connections from the end of that wire to each of the power points, just to make sure we've got our terminations correct and to make sure that we've actually connected and stripped and twisted and doubled over the wire correctly. Okay, so what we need to do now, we're going to need to source some materials. Okay, so I'll put this tool belt, get this tool belt fully loaded up, so I've got a full tool belt. So the tool belts are over here on the actual tool belt tray or rack. So basically get ourselves a tool belt loaded up, and that basically should have in it the tool belt, and it's good practice to put it around your waist. So I'll do that because I'd like you to do the same thing. So put it around your waist, like so. Hold it like that, pull that band through that to hold it tight. Give it so it doesn't fall down. Okay. I usually hang it on my hip like so, as you can see there, I hang it on my hip like so. So in it, I've got a pair of pliers, I've got a pair of side cutters, I've got a Phillips head screwdriver, a smaller Phillips flathead screwdriver, and two different size flathead screwdrivers. So now I need to source some cable clips and I need to source some wire. So what we like to do, we try and reuse wire if we can. Now in this loop, in this stainless steel garbage bin on the right hand corner here, or left hand corner here, sorry, there is some cable already in here. So this cable in here will suffice some of the time. So we'll make sure we'll get a bit of that. Get 2 pieces of that. Okay, we're going to 2 pieces of cable. Give us a bit of space on the bench so we know that we can undertake all the work. So 2 pieces of cable, so that's 2.5. Now, how do I know it's 2.5? Well, basically, all the modern cable that we've got has actually got a size on it, the number of cores that it's got, and also it generally has a measurement of where it was on the drum before it was cut off. So on the side here, on the label here, it says it's 2 core and earth, 2.5mm thermoplastic sheath. So thermoplastic sheath is the wire hunter sheath and the inner red, green and yellow and black single insulated cables on the inside of the cable. The next thing I need is some cable clips. Now the cable clips are actually over in the left hand 4-drawer filing cabinet. So we'll go over there. In the second drawer down, I believe. In the second drawer down here, so now I'll get these cable clips. Now when I look at the cable clips, I've got to make sure I get the right ones. So there's a label on the side of the cable clips that tell you what size cable it is suited for. This particular one says it's good for 1mm and 1.5, so I know that's not the right size cable clip because I've got 2.5mm cable. I'll go to the next one, and that's the same thing again. I'll go to my third drum here, and I've got one that says it is suitable for 2.5 3-core cable. So this is the cable clips that we need. So I've now got my cable clips. I come back, I zoom back around, and this is my cable clips, and there's my label on the side of the cable clips. So I'll put those here ready. And I need a hammer. So the hammer is hanging up on the top right hand side of the whiteboard there, so I'll get a hammer. I personally like using the claw hammer, but you can use the other hammer, the engineering hammer if you wish to, because you're only using the back end of it, so it's okay to do that. Most people, and I myself included, have both of these in my tool bag, in my car. So here we go. So we're here again. Okay, so once again, good work practice. What do I do? Good work practice says, if I undo the clips, I get what I think is going to be a reasonable amount out. So I'm probably going to need about 6 or 8 clips. I'll get those out, put the lid back on, because if you leave it open, you might accidentally bump it, and you'll have 500 odd clips on the ground. Okay, so how am I going to do this now? Well, okay, first got to see if my cables are long enough. So here I'm going to measure that up. Here I've got around about 150mm past the inside edge of both of those. I know that cable's going to do. But I'm not just going to throw in there and clip it. I've got to straighten it out a bit first. So to straighten it out, I put it in my hand and I run my thumb along it like that, pulling in the opposite direction, and putting in a slight little concave bend in it like that. If I do it like that, I know when I put it against the timber, it's going to hug the timber and it's going to look nice and neat. So here I go. I'm going to feed it through the hole already in the block. and you're going to feed it into the other one as well. I'll get nice even distance out of both of them. I make sure the cable looks straight. So I fix the cable approximately 50 millimeters in from either end. I'm not going to measure that, but a good guess by eye. And the same with the block on the left hand side. And I've got two cable supports on that there. So that's the cable in between the power points. Now I need a cable which is going to be the cable that I test with on the right hand side of this block. Now you can do it from the left hand side of that block, or you can do it from the right hand side of this block. I'm going to do it from the right hand side of the block on the right. So here I go, I'm going to feed that through inside here. I'll pull a single length of cable out there. I'll run my thumb along it again so I can put it out through. Now I've said down here on the actual topic skills practice, you've got to leave a little tail for testing, that which wants to be from the edge of the block to the right hand side, approximately another 400 millimeters long. This tail that I've pulled out of the actual drum is longer than that. That's okay to use that. I'm not going to cut that shorter because it'll still do the same job. So now I'm going to make sure I fix this cable so that when I want to do some testing and manipulate it later on, it won't pull out of the block or affect the joint inside the power point. So I'm going to put a couple of nails in that, a couple of clips in that, sorry. Have your clips around about 250 millimeters apart. And another way to stop your last clip from moving is to put one clip one way and put one hard beside it facing the other one. I've got a nice tail there and a nice tail here. Now I've got two tails, a testing tail, a PowerPoint tail and a PowerPoint tail. Now these cables, these PowerPoint cables, 2.5 millimeter cables, have three cores in them each, an active, a neutral and an earth. Now we're going to be asked to terminate and wire and strip these. So how do we do that? This is going to be an ELV, extra low voltage, which is less than 50 volts AC, because this is going to be AC power. Power points, two power points wired in parallel. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is going to get the first one ready over here. So basically, there's many ways to do this, and you can practice with this cables in that steel bin by putting a cable in a vise if you wish to. Make sure my pliers don't get a lot of use, are nice and free so I can manipulate with my hand. I actually put a little crease around the cable like so, not squeezing too hard, and I'll show you a bit closer. Get another cable over here and I'll show you this a little bit closer. Cut a bit off there and I'll show you a bit closer. So I'm going to go approximately 75 millimeters down the end of that cable. So I'm just going to get my slide cutters. I can use my pliers also. Doesn't matter which tool you use it with. And I'm just going to crease the outer insulation around about 70-80 millimeters down the edge of that. And you can see, if you come up closer, you can see the little mark that I've made on that, right? Okay, I've done that for this reason, that when I now want to strip it, I can just put my pliers around one of the cores on the inside of the cable, around one of the cores like so, and I can just twist like that and pull like that down to where I've nipped it, and then if I pull the inner core out of the outer sheath, I can hold one end, pull the sheath the other end, and it'll just break off like so. I'll get the other one, do the same thing again, and it'll just break off so. And the reason why I've done that, I'll get a nice neat cut of my outer sheath around the cable. So that's an example of how to do it. I've done it down here. Let's see if I can do it down here the same. Give it a little squeeze. Pull one of the cables down too. Get the other two cables out. And there we are. Okay, so I've got a approximately 70-80 millimetres of cable hanging out. Now, in regard to now getting this cable stripped, we've only got the one core of the red and the black and the green and yellow here, okay? So because we've only got one core, we're going to have to twist it and double it over so it fills up the termination which is relative to that colour of cable, or that termination which is the active, the neutral and the earth. Now there are two ways of stripping the cable. I generally do it with my pliers, but if I'm doing a multiple over a long period of time, I use the cable stripper. And these cable strippers are up on the wall here. These blue ones. And as you can see on these cable strippers, they are a Klein tool. And as you can see on here, on the edge of that there, I should be able to see that pretty clearly, I think. You can see that it's got the labels 0.15 to 4 millimetres. So you find the 2.5 millimetre hole and you give yourself around about, to strip it, you give yourself about twice the width of the pliers, which is at the width there, down the single insulation. Give yourself a little bit more because you can always cut a little bit off. And here we go. So it's the second last hole on the right hand side. So line it up. Make sure it's lined into the hole correctly so the jaws just pinch the outer insulation, not the cup conductor. Punch it once, punch it twice, and punch it 3 times. And there you go, we've got the 3 sheaves like that, so all ready to go. Okay, so that's basically that. So I'll put a little bit more off because this outer sheave was a little bit damaged already, so we'll take a little bit more from me. There's not quite enough copper showing this to be the case. Right, now I'm going to twist the cable. So here we go. When you twist, grab it, twist and pull towards you slightly. Twist, pull towards you slightly. That way, if you do that, just work your way down the length of the cable. When you do that, you'll find that in doing so, that the actual cores and the copper will twist like a nice, neat rope joint. And it actually, you can see that it's not overlapping at all. Get all of them twisted up to start with in a straight line. And you'll know if you nick the cable accidentally when you eventually strip it, because one or two or how many you've nicked may break off. If that happens to you, you've got to basically start again. So now I measure about twice my jaws of my pliers, 1, 2, and I just cut the rest off. When I double it back over, I just make sure I'm tight again. I grab the end like so, and I twist it, and I don't want the copper to go past the insulation, single insulation like so. I don't want it to go past there. Just butt up to it nice and neatly. Now when you do it so many times, you get so used to it that basically you won't need to measure it with the jaws anymore. You know what the measurement is, and you'll be happy with that measurement. Because 9 times out of 10 you'll get it right first time. Don't be hard on yourself. You know, all it is just practice. I've got those 3 done. Okay, so if I've got those 3 done, the next thing I do is I loosen the screws in my power point. In my power point here, I've got 3 screws. The red, the green and the black are all marked. So good practice is to always do the cable that's going to save your life first. Even though we know that's de-energised, there's no power to it. Good practice to start with the termination of the earth wire first. So the earth wire is the centre wire. We'll get the cables facing in close to how they're going to be terminated in the correct order. So we'll do the earth wire first. When you screw it up, make sure that when you push it into the tunnel where the wire is to be connected, that you don't go in too far. And so you don't screw the screw up against the outer insulation. You make sure that it's actually bonding to the copper of the conductor. And it's not a strength exercise. It's nice and firm, that's all it needs to be. You do your neutral next, which is your black wire. You don't want any copper showing outside the end of the tunnel that it gets pushed into for terminations. You do your active wire last. Okay, you've got them all. What do you do next? Just double check it. Just go back to your left hand side. Just give it a little bit of a check. Make sure the tension's right. It all feels okay. You're all good. That's the first power point terminated, ready to screw back. My second power point here, I basically want to make sure that all the conductors act the same when I push it back into the block housing itself. So I've got to make sure that to do that, I need to get a bit of tape. So tape is hanging up above the wire strippers. Doesn't matter what colour you use, so you happen to be using a white one this time. So the first thing I'll do is I've got to make sure I mark the cables where I want to strip them first. So I'll make sure I push them back against the timber, like so they're nice and square to each other, like that. I'll get that like that, and then basically I think I'm going to strip it back to about there, so I just mark that cable, give it a little squeeze. I mark one beside it, give it a little squeeze, like so. I'll strip both cables first before I take them together. Sometimes you can't just pull them apart like that. You might have to use your side cutters and give it a little nip on the outer insulation without cutting the internal conductor. And you can just peel it like so. You can do most of this with your hands. You don't need to do it with a pair of pliers. And just make sure if you're holding it, give it a little pull forward, away from where you've nipped it, not sideways, straight out forward. Okay, that's nice. I'll cut those spare conductors already off, don't they used to be at the moment. I'll do the same with the next one. You can use a pair of pliers or a pair of side cutters for this. There's no really right and wrong, it's just a case of getting it ready for yourself so you know that however you prefer to do it, you can get used to using either, that's fine. Just take it down to where you've nipped it. Okay, you pull them off like here, like I showed you. Okay, now that all that's done, I want to now basically cut all the conductors the same length. So I line all the two outer sheaths together. I'll make sure the conductors are the same length next. So I'll go back there, hold it nice and tight, and then I'll just nip off all the spare. I'll get my back to you a little bit. I'll try this one. And I'll just make sure all the conductors are the same length. And I do that by using my side cutters. I'll give it a nip, mark them all, and then just cut them all off like so. Once they're all the same length, then you can start stripping the cable. So this time I'm going to use my pliers. So I'll try to leave this as open as I can so you can see this. With my pliers, I'm just going to go down the distance like I did before with at least twice the length of the width of the pliers down the internal sheath of the active conductor. Just give the outer insulation a little tease, a little nip, and just push away like so. It's not muscle, it is method, and only method. Get them all ready like so. Because I'm using my pliers to do the twisting anyway, if you can get used to using a pair of pliers like this, it saves you using two tools, i.e. the wire strip ring pliers. So once all of them are ready and stripped, I basically now got to twist them together. So I'll make sure my conductors are all lined up correctly, so I'll now do my active conductor. Make sure the insulation is at the same length in both cases, so that they're very even with one another when you start twisting. So it acts as one conductor. Once again, you twist and pull at the same time, twist and pull. But because we now have two conductors down, we do not need to twist the cable or double it over. We don't need to double it over, sorry. We still need to twist it, but we don't need to double it over. Got to make sure the conductor isn't too long. If you need to check that, you can check that by just undoing one of the screws in the actual power point itself and just see if it is too long, because you don't want the insulation to pull out. Now you can see that's not too long, so that's fine. The insulation is going inside the tunnel, so that's nice. That's how it should be. You do the same with the earth wire. Get to the inner insulation lined up, twist and pull, twist and pull, twist and pull, twist and pull. A nice bit of tension on that wire, because when the screw goes up against it, it's going to manipulate it a bit, and you don't want all the wires to start falling apart. This is the third one. insulation lined up correctly. Twist and pull, twist and pull, twist and pull. So definitely believe is the right length again. Some of these pliers are a little bit blunt. Okay, so I've got all that ready. So that's all ready now. So now what I'm going to do, I mentioned about the tape before. I'm just going to tape the outer sheath together, just where the single insulation stops and it meets the outer sheath. I'm going to do that because when I push it back into the mounting block, I don't want all the wires to go in opposite directions and put pressure on the twist that I've already created on the end of the cable. Just give it once around, give it a little tension, pull the sheath out without pulling off the tape, and go around one more time. And then just pull tight and break it off like so. And that should be enough. Okay, so now we're going to plug with our power point. We'll do the same thing again. We'll make sure we loosen all the screws off first. Don't try and push the wire into the hole without the screw being undone, because you'll manipulate and damage your wire a bit that you've already prepared, ready to go into the hole. Once again, I do the same thing again. I get them in the correct order. I do my earth wire first. There's no harm in actually doing this, lining it all up, putting them all into the terminations all at the same time, like so. You can do that too, but good practice, screw your earth wire up first. These screws that actually screw against the wire are either Phillips and flat. So some of the time when you put your screwdriver, flip your screwdriver against it, even though the power points have been used multiple times, the screw heads could be slightly damaged, and therefore you might not be able to get it tight enough with a Phillips head screwdriver. So just go so far with the screwdriver, and then get your number 5 flathead screwdriver, which is a reasonable size blade, a 5mm blade, and put that in the slot there, and do the same thing again and just tension it up with that. Do not use a rattle gun for this, because if you use a rattle gun for this and you're not used to using a rattle gun or understand the tension of a rattle gun, you can easily damage the screw. Qualified sparkies, a lot of them do use rattle guns for this sort of thing. I don't, but I do sometimes take the rattle gun and go so far with it and then just check it with my screwdriver at the end, because it's a feel thing, you know, it just really is. You just need to be able to feel that tension, and a rattle gun, even though it has a battery in it and it has different types of tension settings on how much force is in it, you, depending on how strong or flat your battery is, can determine the amount of strength that you've got. So it may not always rattle at the correct tension, and you can damage the screw head. So I think a screwdriver is a good thing to do. Clean your rubbish up as you go. I've just gone to the rubbish bin there. So now I need to be able to screw this back. So I've got the pair ready to go. Make sure they go back in the hole nice and neatly. Just take a little bit of care. You don't want all of them to go right. Also, just when you push them back, bend them a little bit straight like so. So when they get back in the hole, it just goes nice and neatly back into the block. The same with this one. Spend a little bit of effort. Just going to push it back into the hole like so, and just lay it back in, so that basically the block itself will actually go back without putting too much tension on the wire itself. Okay, and that's good. Where do I get the screws from? Okay, here we are. Once again, we go to the screw box over here. This time we'll go to the big Milwaukee box. It's in the back left-hand corner. And you'll see some screws that are silver in colour, and they are approximately 20 to 25mm long. I need 4. Got 4 of these. This is what they look like. Little silver screws like so. Okay. The head like so. And you need 4 of those. Once again, I use my Phillips head driver for that. Okay. So once again, you line one screw hole up, you get one screw started like so. Don't do it up tight. Get the other one started before you do either of them up tight. So make sure you're not putting any pressure on the connections or the wire. Now when you screw that back, just come down, because it will move around a bit, try and get it sitting nice and straight on the block. It wants to look good as well as being functional. This first one is the 2000 series with the removable cover, so a painter can paint around it. Just put that on, looks nice and neat. Now my second one is the standard 25 series power point. Once again, do the same thing again. You can do the left or the right screw first, doesn't really matter what one you do, as long as you do one. Get the screws nice and lined up before you start screwing it up. You don't want to strip the thread inside, so don't put it on an angle. Take a bit of care. Just work your way with both screws, moving it in slowly. And there we have it. We have two power points fitted off with the tail hanging at the end, ready for testing. Put our speed clips away, put the lid back on, and basically we have just completed Toby Skills Prac 5.3 2.1.1. We go over to page 7, and we've got to work out and describe what we've done and how we've done it. And then on pages 6 and 7, we've basically got to answer some questions and how we went about that. Now you look at those questions and you've got to answer those questions relative to how you've completed the task. Okay, so some of those questions are relative to OH&S, some are in regard to sustainable work practices, i.e. like using some of the wire that's already in the steel bin, using some of the mounting blocks that we've pulled already out of the store that have been used by others. And you've got to answer questions like, did I need any assistance from the teacher or the person in charge at the time? And also a question in regard to some common types of work tasks that you may have chosen in the electrotechnology trade that you can see this is relative to. So that's basically it on this Topic Skills Prac 5.3. I haven't mentioned, even though this has to be tested, I haven't mentioned testing at this particular start point, but testing will come in the unit skills test sheet of this particular unit. This first particular practice is to understand how to use the tools, to recognise the tools and the electrical equipment you need to be able to complete an electrical work task, i.e. mount two power points on a mounting block. It's got to look good, it's got to be functional, it's got to be electrically correct, and basically we'll prove that electrical connection in our next video. I'll press pause, ready for the next video.